Okay,
Got it.
perfect. Thank you. All right, everyone. So, good morning to this beautiful, beautiful sunny Sunday. And as always, I really wish that this beautiful sun, it's not only outside, but it's also shining really bright in our heart and in our minds. Um, and then before I do a couple of announcements, I just would like to ask our brother Tony to do our opening prayer today.
Sure. Let us all close our eyes. Let's ground our feet to Mother Earth. And as we ground our feet to Mother Earth, let's open our crown chakra, take in all the beautiful energy and let it flow through your entire body. And let's give thanks for another beautiful divine morning that we have here together to learn and to grow. And we ask God for guidance and all the good spirits to come through today so we can take these lessons again into our hearts so that we leave here today just a little lighter with a little more knowledge for us to practice. We want to give thanks for all the incarnates and discarnates that are here, all the good spirits, and everybody here with our main focus, which is to learn to grow and to do your will as best as we can. And that we stay focused on our primary purpose, which is to help one another. Again, we want to give blessings to everybody that's here. And with that, we ask to open our session for this morning. So be it.
So it is. Thank you so much, brother.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. So, welcome to Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center. Here we respect all religions and all spiritual traditions. We are a non denominational organization, but we are part of the United States Spiritist Federation. So, all of our beliefs are around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles of the Spiritism. And this is what we do here. We study. Emmanuel, the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier, taught us that knowledge and love are the two wings that are necessary for our spiritual evolution. So you will see that this service is split into two parts. The first one, someone will be speaking to us, and I will introduce him in just 1 second. But your participation is extremely important during this moment because your mentor is already supporting you with insights from the speaker. So reflecting along your week is going to be really important. We highly recommend that you have a pencil and a piece of paper with you so then you can write down the messages that come to you so then you can reflect along your week. And then the second part is going to be a hands on healing where all of us will be receiving passes. And allow me to share my screen with you all so then you can see our agenda. We do have, let me see, we do have plenty of opportunities for us to be together. Let me see which page it is. Whoops. Here. Here. You can all see the agenda, right? So here we have plenty of opportunities for us to be together and to keep working not only on the knowledge part, but also on the loving part. So this is the agenda that you can find at bshcenter.org. You're more than welcome to see all the details, but I do would like to highlight 3 services. So one is every Monday we have healing services, which is internal for the mediums and the workers of BSH. So during this moment, we receive all the names for everybody that is in need of receiving vibrations for physical treatment or spiritual treatment. And then we work on those names for at least 4 weeks. So if you are in need, or if you have someone that you love that is in need of receiving physical or spiritual healing, please let us know through the chat box, or you can send WhatsApp for whoever you know from BSH, and we will be happy to add those persons on the books. And of course, this is closed because this is a meeting where the mediums will be working with the high spirituality. We also have daily prayer. So we know that it is in giving that we receive, and planet Earth is in very much need of receiving good and positive energy. So everybody is invited to join us 6 p.m. Pacific time from Monday to Saturday. And it takes usually 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes for all of us to pray together, to vibrate together. It's in the same link. So again, everybody's welcome to join us. And the other thing that I also would like to reinforce is the fraternal counseling. So we know that sometimes we all go through difficult moments. If you are in need to vent, or if you are in need to share your thoughts, any ideas, all the BSH mediums are ready to support you. Usually we do that on Wednesdays from 4 to 7 p.m., also Pacific time. But if you need to schedule any other time, please, by all means, let us know. We'll be making sure that someone is assigned to talk to you. And then other than that, we have plenty of opportunities with book studies at Divine Light, at BSH. And again, you're more than welcome to join us in this journey. Again, if you need anything, go to bshcenter.org and you will see all the details. And this month, we are dedicating for the awareness of the prevention of suicide. How do we make sure that we are supporting those brothers and sisters who are in deep need? So today, continuing this beautiful chapter, we will have our brother Brian Abeel talking to us about signs and stories of a suicide. For those who yet don't know Brian, he is a founding member of Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center. At an early age, he could see and communicate with spirits. However, he suppressed his spiritual gifts until a life-changing experience caused him to embrace his study of mediumship and healing. In 2005, Brian graduated from Nancy Bradley's Truth and Healing Center as a healing medium. He continued working with her until, from Nancy. He continued working with her until 2009, and in 2012, Brian began studying mediumship and spiritism with Tanya and Greg Stewart of Brazilian Spiritual Healing. Brian is an environmentalist with over 33 years of experience working with various federal, state, local, and private agencies for the protection of California's environment, citizens, and property. Brian is grateful for the divine opportunities, loving and serving God's will. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Brian. And please feel free to share with us your thoughts, brother. And please help me to welcome our dear Brian. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll humble myself real quick. He said the stage is mine. I'm not on the stage above you all. I'm equal to you. As I'm beginning to share the screen, let's see. I'd like to take off where Brother Charles started. Be able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I'm Brian. This is my body. But I am Brian in the totality of my spirit in this body. So it's all about the spirit, not about the body. And a lot of suicides, they don't have the education to discern that. But little by little, the light does come on. Thank God for Spiritism that has helped us. And what I'm going to talk about today comes from Part 2, Chapter 5, Suicide. But before I get into suicide, I thought it was important that we refresh our minds about what Spiritism provides for us. It's the Spiritism triple aspect, where we have the Spirit's book for philosophy, the Medium's book for science, and the Gospel according to Spiritism religion. Here we are talking today, we're philosophizing, I'm sharing, you're sharing where we are and our understanding of what life is all about, what suicide is about, and what suicide can cheat not only the suicide victim, but the other victims who are involved who are connected to the suicide. We have the Medium's book, and that is the science behind Spiritism. But you know what? We are the science as well, because we begin to understand more of the truth, what the Spirit of Truth is telling us in the Gospel and the other books that we read that have been psychographed by Chico, by Divaldo, others that have Spirit coming through them. And through the education, we're applying, heeding the messages and applying them the best that we can in our life. And as we apply them in our life, we're actually doing the science of reasoned faith, not blind faith, but we're beginning to wrap ourselves around what is the truth through what happens in our life and reflecting on it through our philosophical thoughts. The gospel gives us the morality to purify ourselves so that we can do this better and applying the science in our lives to come to this reasoned faith for a greater understanding of the truth. And as we know, in Spiritism, we have the fundamentals, the existence of God, the existence of spirits and their survival after death, reincarnation, multitude of inhabited worlds, and communication with spirits. Now, in larger font and bolded are the existence of God and reincarnation in this slide. And these are the elements that appear to be missing in a lot of the suicides. They don't have the faith, they don't have the trust in God, they don't believe in God, nor do they believe in reincarnation, future, and the purpose of life. And through the suicide, some of them become, in the spirit world, begin to realize that there is a God and there is a purpose in reincarnation. And there is a trial that we go through. And when we commit suicide, we're cutting ourselves off from that trial. And we'll have different circumstances that will present themselves in another life, but it's going to be the same trial. But some are not there yet for that understanding. Thankfully, we're here today to connect still to what Spiritism can provide us, the Spirit of Truth and the depth of the understanding that we know. And Tony actually started to address this presentation through the words that he spoke in his prayer. And I heard gratitude for the life that we have, gratitude for where we are, gratitude for being together in a community. And unfortunately, with suicide, that's lacking. So thankfully, Spiritism provides us the purpose for reincarnation, why we're here, for our past and current afflictions, to work through them, through our trials. Thankfully, we have the gospel from Jesus to show us the way. It's not about materialism, it's about morality. That's what we take with us from life to life. And as we face these trials, we begin to build this inner faith in God, this inner trust in God, where whatever obstacle we face, we can walk through it, we can face it and walk through it, and we'll get to the other side. We don't take our lives because we know that there is another life, and we will keep purifying ourselves until we get back to that simple state where we're totally purified as we were created by God. We have this understanding, and that's what keeps us going through the hard times and the good times. As the gospel addresses our afflictions are due to how we direct our will, our thoughts, and our actions in this lifetime. And if we're living in pride, we're living in ego, we're living in the material world, we're getting away what Jesus is trying to tell us. The way is through morality. It's through loving, which Tony mentioned, and being there for our brother and sister, helping them climb as we climb. We give, we receive. And we also have past life afflictions where we've done something in the past and we bring it into this lifetime. As we know, there are children born into this world and they don't last long. They're afflicted with some type of disease, and it just doesn't seem fair, but it's God's justice. We don't know what the justice is. We don't know what they did in their past life, but they're meeting their trial, and in doing so, they're also helping others meet their trials as well. So there are signs of affliction. We all have them. We've all gone through a moment in our lives, be it past life or this life. Let's think about this life. Think about those times when you might have had a loss. It could have been a family member. It could have been a pet. It could have been a car. It could have been some material item. It could have been a job. It could have been your wallet. And when we lose something, we can feel a little pain of why did I lose that? And sometimes we can have multiple losses. And sometimes it can bring some suffering that just might seem unbearable, tough. And we ask ourselves, why? Why is it happening to me? A state of confusion goes in. What did I do wrong? Why, God? Why? And then it goes to doubt. Like, I must be doing something wrong. Why am I having this loss? Why is it happening to me? Why is it happening to the loved ones around me? I don't understand it. You begin to perhaps lose faith in God if you have an understanding of God. You can go into despair, dealing with the loss, the situation. Unknowing what to do can create anxiety of what the future brings. Have a lost job. How are you going to put food on the table? How are you going to be able to pay rent? How are you going to put gas in the car? How are you going to pay for that bus ride? How are you going to put clothing on your children? How are you going to provide shoes when there's a hole in the shoe? How are you going to feed your pets? Anguish can take this pain a little farther, where you're just soaking in it, and the doubt, the loss, the despair, the confusion, the anxiety. And it just grows, and that pain starts to become unbearable. And it's like, what do you do? And you're feeling the weight of the world. And then you begin to have desperation, like it's not going to change. Can't climb out of it. And then you're disgusted, maybe, because you keep trying to climb out of it, but nothing seems to work. You become frustrated with yourself, and maybe not happy with the choices that you're making. Could be a loss of finance, and you can't support anyone who's in your life. You may be the head of the family, and it builds the shame that you're not able to be responsible for those that you love. All of these are just building and building and building that unbearable emotional pain to where it just intensifies so much that you begin to feel unworthy because you just aren't pulling your weight, which can unfortunately force suicide. If they get to it, they begin to withdraw. Well, no matter who talks to them, they're not listening because they're already cut off to all the resources that are there for them. They have a state of hopelessness. They see no life's purpose. They see no need in living life anymore. They can't stand the pain anymore. They want the pain to stop. And in Heaven and Hell, in part 2, chapter 5, there's various stories that talk about suicide, different types of suicide, why they kill themselves, and what they're going through in the spirit world. What are the reasons? Well, there are several stories. Several of them talk about out of love to save another. There's a story about a father and a conscript, a son who has to go to war, and the father does not want his son to go to war. He's afraid he's going to die, and so he kills himself. So he leaves them, the son and the wife, and he's the only son of a widower. And based on the law of that time, the son is saved from the war because he's the last and only son. He does not have to go to war. Family, social, economic status. There's a story of Félicien, maybe pronouncing it wrong. Félicien. He lost everything monetarily, and he decided to kill himself. He didn't see a return. He didn't see him being able to climb out of it, so he took his life. There were people who were in poverty, as one individual, who couldn't stand where he was in life, not being able to have the food, not to be able to have the monetary means to take care of his everyday living needs like others. And he killed himself. He couldn't stand it. He couldn't understand the trial that he was going through. Then there was loss of a loved one, a mother losing her son, losing the son at such a young age. And so she wanted to be close to him still. And so she took her life, having some understanding of the future life, but believing it was in heaven and she would go to heaven to be with him. And there are punishments that come with these suicides. It's not the punishment of God, it's the punishment of our vibration of where we are if we were to take our lives. Oops. There's one of a haunting past, an individual, and this deals with past afflictions, to where this individual loved this woman, couldn't have this woman. She married another person, and so she killed the husband of that woman. And he was delusional in the next life because the father of the son followed him in the spirit world and was obsessed with him to make him pay. and that obsession drew him to delusional unhappiness, the memory of what he did, but not quite understanding the memory. And he couldn't deal with that pain. He couldn't deal with the torment. So he took his life, not understanding that he had this trial to fulfill, and it would get better and better in the next life if he were to face this trial. But he had no understanding of the punishment, the trial that he was receiving based on how he sowed his seeds and the understanding of the lives to come. So with suicides, as they talk about in this chapter, the spirits through the mediums and Allan Kardec putting it all to pen. There's premeditated suicides and there's thoughtless suicides, moment of passion. They're just lost in the state of it. They're not thinking well and they kill themselves. And that was the situation of Lewis and the boot sticker. He was in love with a woman, or he thought he was in love with a woman. And she truly wasn't in love with him. And she was just going through life. She was finding a way to break it off. And they had an argument. He wanted forgiveness. He went to her. She wasn't going to forgive. She was going to leave him one way or another sooner or later. And this was just the right opportunity to break it off. And he couldn't stand it. And so he killed himself. But he realized in the spirit world that he truly wasn't in love with her, because if he was in love with her, he would have allowed her to go on her way and he would move on. But he couldn't face that trial that he was going through, and he took his life. He cut his trials short. Then there's the premeditated ones, where there's the suicide at Samaritan, where it was an individual who went through life, didn't have a close family, felt abandoned wherever he was in life, and he couldn't stand it anymore. He drove the drink, which caused even more despair and hopelessness. And finally, he killed himself. I spoke about the father in conscript. Father killed himself out of a love of another. It's not as bad as a punishment, because God recognizes that he loved his son. He wanted to save his son, but in taking life, he prevented him to face his trials, as well as the son to face his trials. The son may have lived in the war, but the father didn't have the trust and the faith in God for a higher purpose. Whatever was to come, it was a higher purpose. If his son were to die or if his son was to live, it was what was supposed to happen. But he didn't have that faith. He didn't have that understanding. And then there was Francis Simon. As I mentioned, he lived a life of poverty. And it just was unbearable. He couldn't live with it. He couldn't face the trial. In a previous life, he had a lot of things, but in this life, he did not. And he just could not face the opposite. And he took his life. And the mother and the son, I mentioned that she went into the spirit world chasing her son. She wanted to be with him. Then there was the double suicide out of love and sense of duty. A lady and a man killed themselves. And growing up, they had loved each other, but they didn't tell each other. And out of duty, the wife married a man who the parents wanted her to marry, but knowing that she cared for this other man. And this other man, knowing that she had married, he went ahead and married someone else. It just turned out that this woman's, the one who loved this other man, her husband, was good friends with the man that she loved. And so they could not avoid each other. They didn't go, on their way. Their life went this way, their life went that way. It was still parallel, and they would see each other all the time. And this love just grew, and this temptation of wanting to be with each other grew. But they did not want to break their vows. And so they left a letter explaining what they did and why they did. They killed themselves because they did not want to break their vows in marriage, but they wanted to be together. And so they went to the spirit world to be together. Unfortunately, they're separated in the spirit world. That's their punishment. And the woman felt a lot of pain because she left her husband back on in the terrestrial world in pain because now he didn't have his wife, and he felt like perhaps he wasn't good enough for her. And so he was going, but that's his trial now. But he's in the terrestrial world and lived through that, apparently. Then there's the atheist. It's a story about two brothers. One killed himself and another didn't. The one who did, he had a previous life where he had everything, and the material things, and he that's what he cared most about. But in the present life, when he killed himself, material things just weren't as satisfying as the previous life. And this was his trial to get him to have an understanding of what God is, and the meaning of God and the meaning of life. And he was just unhappy. He couldn't cross that hurdle. He couldn't make that connection, and he decided to kill himself. And he's suffering in the spirit world, trying to come to an understanding of God and the life's purpose. And but then there's the brother who didn't kill himself, who was the same way in regards to materialism, but he had a deeper understanding. He was calmer. When they asked the brother who committed suicide to write to the medium, he was still filled with anger of not knowing why he was in the spirit world, why he was going through what he was going through, because he was trying to escape the pain and the unhappiness that he was living in the material world, and his writing was jerky. He just wasn't calm. There was no peace. But the other brother who lived the trial and then crossed over had peace. He could write. His voice was calmer as he was speaking to the medium. And they were both coming to an understanding of in their own way of what God was. But the brother who didn't commit suicide was calmer and was coming to the understanding of this was he was in the spiritual world and coming to an understanding of God and being able to decipher the difference between materialism and having morality in life, following the teachings of Christ. That doesn't say it directly, but indirectly, that is the message, at least how my point of view, as Brian, as again, going back to how I started today, my understanding of what the truth and how I read the truth. Then there was Felician, who had a disappointment. No matter what he did, it didn't seem to satisfy him. And then he lost everything, and that was the ultimate crush to him. He was a amicable guy. He was a very friendly guy. Everybody loved him. And he just couldn't face his disappointments, and he killed himself. And he'd actually been facing similar circumstances for 3 previous lives, but he killed himself, and he's going to come back again and in another life facing the same trial, not to kill himself, but the circumstances, the situations will be different. But there were people who in the mediums group and working with Allan Kardec who cared about this individual. He had touched their lives in a way to where they wanted to evoke him. They wanted to know how he was doing. Interesting enough, he was calm and kind of collected as he came through and spoke to everyone through the medium. And the medium's mentor thought this was kind of strange. You're a suicide. You're not suffering. You don't seem to be showing signs of suffering. Why? And he did explain that he doesn't want to think about his death, because if he thinks about his death, then he is suffering. But he wanted everybody to learn about what he went through. And he was very thankful near the end when they were all praying for him, which Tony talked about. Oh, Tony not talked about, but he did the act of praying. And that's an act of salvation for a suicide, reaching out to God, speaking to God, as well as speaking to a friend There's always a friend before the suicide gets to hopelessness, to share, to get things off their chest. And in doing so, hopefully they come to an understanding that their problems aren't as great, and perhaps their problems are less severe than so many others in the world. Then there was Anton Bell, who had a tormenting past. And I'm trying to remember. He was a banker who committed suicide. This was the one who actually had the lover in a previous life, but that lover, at least the one that he had loved, had married another man, and so he killed that man, and he went to another life, and the punishment was God, was allowing that the man who was killed, the father-in-law, to obsess him, and it drove him to delusion. That was just unbearable pain. And he actually would go to his pharmacist thinking that he had poisoned someone. And the pharmacist was like, I didn't give you any medicine to do that. But he had this thought that he had done that. And that's what he did in a previous life. He had apparently poisoned this other individual to kill them. But it was coming back to haunt him in the next life. That was his punishment. And it was the father-in-law who was inflicting it. Of course, the father-in-law who's doing that in the spirit life, he'll have his punishment for doing that. But the story here is that we can have past afflictions that are from previous lives that come to haunt us in our next life. And it's a trial that we have to get through. We have an expiation. So the suicide effects, when one takes their life, they're hastening the extinction of the vital forces. They're cutting off that life. And there's an expected life duration for every life. We don't know when we're going to die. I don't know when I'm going to die in the body of Brian. I don't know when the body of Brian is going to fail. But as I go through life, I have these trials. And as Spiritism teaches us, we have, there's a purpose. And it's for expiation. We also have a mission. As a lot of us here, we're studying mediumship because it's a gift that God has given us to discover in this lifetime. And we're supposed to give it away in order to receive what we need, which will strengthen us and provide us the courage for our trials that we're going through. And if I were to cut my life short now, I would be pulling myself from this group. And I would shake this group. I would send a vibration that would shake this group. And in some ways, I would alter all of your trials, all of what you're going through in life. I'm supposed to be here just as much as you are all supposed to be here. We're meant to be here together as a community, helping each other through our trials. And when we pull ourselves out of that circle, not only are we pulling ourselves out of our trials and being an assistance to ourselves and growing, but we're doing the same to others. We're sending a vibration, a ripple effect. And we will pay for that in the next life. How? I don't know. The Supreme Being, the causes of all causes, as we know, God makes that determination. We sow the seeds, though. We're the ones. We're the punishers. We're the punishers of ourselves. We cut short our trials. We alter the trials of others. Let's go back to the story of the father and the conscript. By the father committing suicide, he prevented the son going to war, and that was the son's trial. That was what was supposed to happen under the universal laws. Now, the son could have survived the war, and he could have, been tormented by what happened in the war, or he could have built strength and courage and helped others after the war. He could have lost a leg and then helped others who lost a leg, who could work through their torment of not having that leg, of having the strength to face reality. We don't know what that trial was, but this father ripped that away from him. And that was his punishment, not the punishment. It was a little less severe because God recognized the love that he had. And God wants us to love one another and be there for each other, but not in the way that the father acted by taking his life in order to save his son. If the son were to die in the war, it was the will of God. And when we try to be God, then we put ourselves above God, and we're cutting ourselves off to the connection of really what life is all about, the spirit world. Connect to God, connect to our mentors, and we play God, and we'll get punished for that. So we have to watch how we sow our seeds. And if you're in questioning and you want to take your life, there are ways to reach out so you can rebalance yourself. And there'll be the resources later on in this presentation. So when one kills themselves, there is the ripple effect, not only in the physical world, like the sun, the conscript, but in the spiritual world, where the father of the conscript, he couldn't write the word God. He didn't have trust in God in the physical world, that his son would live through the war. But in the spiritual world, when he was evoked, they were asking him, the mentor was asking him through the medium to write the word God, trust in God, and he couldn't. It was so hard for him, and that was his punishment, to have faith, have trust in God. By the end, he was able to write the word God, and he was able to start to begin the repentance that God wished for this individual. So suicide commonalities, which the heaven and hell goes into. When one kills themselves, they're kind of lost in this vortex. They doubt that they died. They believe that they're still alive. And the more they're attached to the material world, the more they're attached to the physical world, and the confusion is greater. Suicide is like being a somnambulistic state, in a sleep state, having a suspension of all sensing. They can't sense where they are. They can't sense that, no, they're not in the real and the physical world, but nor can they sense that they're in the spiritual world. They're in this state of confusion. For example, in the beginning, where is it? Bear with me here. Felicion. Nope. Okay, well, I don't remember which store it was, but this individual, he jumped. Oh, I think it was the alcoholic, which was, I think it was the suicide. No. Okay, forgive me. But anyway, there was one that jumped from a building, and he's caught in emptiness from jumping off the building to hitting the ground, not knowing where he is, not understanding this emptiness, not understanding that he's no longer in the physical world nor in the spiritual world, but he's in this state of worry, of not knowing, this anxiety, this despair, feeling all the same feelings that he did just before he took his life, but they're amplified. And that's what happens in the suicide, that they think they're escaping the pain and suffering, but they're finding that the pain and suffering in the spirit world, which they don't seem to grasp that they're there, is just 10 times greater. Only do they, when they begin to have this intuition of where they are, that this pain can start to subside. and they can begin to have an understanding of what they did and where they are. And through these evocations, through the mediums group that Alan Kardec was working with and took these stories and wrote them down, this group was enabling these suicides to come to this awareness of where they were in this state. For example, like Felicien, who killed himself for the 4th time, he began to understand that he had taken his life once again, and began to realize that he shouldn't have done that. And he realized he was looking forward to the next life, but he didn't really kind of come to this understanding until he was evoked and they started talking to him, and they all prayed together. Felicien and the medium's mentor, and the others working in the medium group, providing that balm of prayer. Prayer and repentance. Those are the bombs for a suicide. And that's what Felicien was receiving at that time of evocation. Illusion of being alive rather than having died can be more painful or less, leaving the spirit in a state of anxiety, like the individual who had jumped off the building, as I explained. And the illusion lasts for a length of time which the person should have lived without shortening their life. We may want to shorten our life. We want to get out of the pain. Well, we have a set time that we're supposed to go through this experience in this lifetime. And if we commit suicide, we're still going to go through and have to face our trials. We're not cutting these pains short. We're just intensifying it. And actually what we're doing is that we're going to have to face the trial again. And the pain could even be more severe in the next life. So let's face it now together. So the duration and intensity of the punishment can vary depending on the effect and the offense of the circumstances. You had the father in the conscript. Now the father, he killed himself out of love for his son, so he's recognized for the love that he wanted to give his son. But he cut his life short, and he cut his son's trials short. He altered his path. He was not supposed to do that, and that was his punishment. There were others who, for example, like the last one, which was Antoine Bell, the one who had killed a man in his previous life. His punishment carried over to the next life, and he had a clear mind in the previous life when he killed this individual, but now he's going through this punishment of delusion. He doesn't have a clear head. He's horrified through this obsession of what he did, and he doesn't understand it. So depending on what we do and how we do it, meaning how we apply our morality, if we have morality or not in our life, and how we took our life, premeditated or out of just passion, out of just not thinking straight, not premeditated, will determine our punishment. And it's not God's punishment, it's our punishment. It's because of the sows that we seed. There's no absolute or uniform rule about the means of punishment for an individual. It just varies based on the circumstances and the trials that the one was facing and the trial that they were running from. So it's according to our actions. Again, no uniform punishment. And when we commit a suicide, we're stuck in a vibrational state. But aren't we all in a vibrational state when we pass? So we can be happy, or we can be sad, or we can be angry, or we can be a thief, we could be a murderer. But when we pass, if we're in one of those states, we're taking that vibration with us. And we could be stuck, not knowing where we are, especially when we're so attached to the material world that we don't know we're in the physical world or the spiritual world. And again, the pain can be intensified based on the deed of what we did. And the lengthening of the duration, again, is depending on our actions, how we played our part. And it could be because we have doubt in God, but God's justice and goodness is always there. It's us who is trying to fight the universal law of reincarnation and purifying ourselves from one life to the next. And when we do, we'll reincarnate into the same life. As the message is told from story to story in Heaven and Hell, Part 2, Chapter 5, Suicides. We'll face the same trial, it just will be different circumstances. The good thing in life is that there's always a hand. And what a wonderful thing that we have here. We have a community of people, like-minded, who want to better themselves as well as help each other better themselves. And each of us have had a moment of pain and suffering. Each of us have had a moment that might seem a little unbearable, and how do we see our way through it? But we've reached to each other, and through each other, we have prayer, and we've been there for each other, and through education to understanding why we're going through this. And that's the beautiful thing of a community, and that's what God wants us to do, is be growing within a community, sharing the love, loving each other, being there for each other, being charitable to each other, not for what we're going to receive, but for what we can give to our brother or sister who is in need. Of course, we're going to receive something, but it will be what we need, not what we want. So let's take want out of the equation and just know whatever we go through, whatever we're dealing with, there's a higher purpose in life, and resign to what we're going through. And it's getting easier for me. I'm sure it's getting easier for all of you, because you have this understanding of God, and trust in God, and love in God, and understanding what our afflictions, and understanding what we carry into a next life. We understand that life goes on after the death of the body, because it's about the spirit, not the body, through studying with each other and communicating with spirits and being there for rescue on Monday nights. So these are the resources for a suicide. And the bottom one, speak to a friend. You know, I don't know any of you, but there was a time in my life where I thought I didn't want to be in this world anymore. But I was a part of this group, and this group helped walk with me. I learned with all of you why we're here, began to remove my doubt. I have no doubt that the loss of Kiki in our lives, my wife and I, and we're dealing with it in different extremes, and I have to respect my wife's trial, but I have no doubt that there's a higher purpose here working. And the higher purpose for me, if I'm coming to an understanding right now, is it's the spirit, not the body. And she will return. I know it. I know when. I've been told because I can listen to the spirits. I can listen to the mentors. I can listen to the mediumship that comes through all of you and speaking with each other. And that's a saving grace. It helps me ride the pain and the suffering, ride through it. So I don't want to take my life. I don't inflict unhealthy things upon myself, because I know there's a higher purpose. It's okay. I resign to what I'm going through. Unfortunately, though, there are others out there who who aren't there yet in their evolution, who don't quite understand what we understand. And we're not above them. We're equal to them. They're our brothers and sisters in need. That's why we have counseling on Wednesdays. That's why we have these classes or these presentations on Sunday and healing. This is why we have the other activities throughout the week. so that hopefully we can touch an individual and begin to crack through their armor. And they came to this group, some come and go, but they come here because somewhere there's a crack and they're wanting an understanding, a greater understanding. Sometimes, though, it doesn't work that way, and there are others out there who just don't know where to turn. But if they were just to pick up the phone or to call or text, there'll be another person on the other side who hopefully can speak their language, who hopefully can share with them that makes them feel that they understand where they are. And when another individual can come to an understanding who wants to take their life, that there's another who knows what they're feeling, who has the compassion for what they're feeling, who has the empathy for what they're feeling, then that onion is starting to get peeled back. And as more peels come off, the more that person on the other end of the phone can help this person get to the core of their issue and hopefully provide a little salvation for them to help them get to the next point where they can receive more help and allow the healing to occur, not in a symptomatic way, but in a core way. So, the balm for suicide, prayer as a community, prayer together, holding a hand with another individual, letting them know that you're there for them. Keep in mind that we only have control over ourselves, not the other individual. They have their free will. They can come and go as they wish. But if we shine as Jesus asked us to shine, maybe we can just help nurture that God seed that's in this other individual, and they can grow to where they can come to a greater understanding of what they're facing and resign to it. And if it has to do with some sin that they have to repay for, hopefully they can come to a state of repentance. And if that suicidal person could come to that point and begin to pray with the community, and begin to repent, they're on the way to salvation and on the way to facing the trial in this life for bigger and greater things in the lives to come. Jesus just wants us to be there for each other. And by being there, we receive. Again, we receive what we need. And we receive it through love and charity. Thank you.
Thank you, dear brother. Such a hard topic for us to talk, right? It's difficult to, as you were describing all the stories and everything. Two things that actually came into my mind that I just wanted to share very quick. One is, sometimes whenever we hear some story, and that's me. I was like, this is solvable. We could, like, if this person believed in someone that he or she could talk to, maybe the story could have been different. And that brings me anxiety about how many friends are out there and they are having some level of this thought and we don't know. So I think this only encourages us to know two things. One is the problem will have the size that we put on that. So it's not on us to say this is solvable or not, because we are not on that person's shoes. So extending a hand and being there for the person is extremely important, instead of trying to say to that person, that doesn't hurt, this shouldn't be hurting as much as it is. If it is hurting, it's not up to us to judge that. So the more that we can extend a hand, embrace the person with love and support, I think that the better it is. And then the other thing also too is, we discussed a lot about what happens whenever we go through this, right? Like, so if this is the decision that we take, then which are the punishments that we are bringing to ourselves due to our vibration and how we are attached to all of that. But there is a beautiful, beautiful service that the high spirituality also do to try to bring those people back to reality and understand. But there is and I'm saying that for us not to think that, God is evil because God doesn't help us to live from that moment. But what happens is that when we are in that situation, we can't even see. And we have many examples, not only in heaven and hell, but also in the memories of a suicide, but also in the no solar, that sometimes the family is praying and then the person is not in tune with that, and that's the reason why he or she cannot be rescued sooner than later. So I think it's important for us to keep in mind that it is a beautiful service, and the more we can help, the better it is. But it's also our responsibility to decide what to do with our own lives, and this is the same for everyone who decides for that path. Thank you for sharing with us your studies, brother. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicky, I really like what you said, because it's often that, or easy, I want to say, for us to judge a suicide, right? Or the person who committed suicide, or maybe friends or family thinking they haven't done enough. I mean, so easily we pass moral judgment on the involved parties, right? And I really enjoy you kind of calling us out to, we don't know, the best thing is to just send love and to withdraw from all judgment. And the situation is hard enough as it is, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. It's just challenging. It's an opportunity for everyone, including us, to really do our best from our hearts, to tune in and to be supportive, and judgment is not supportive, right? So thank you, Brian. This was beautiful. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
I felt your heart.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Brian, you've continued the past weeks of interpreting the messages, not only for your life, but for ours, and communicating the realities. And if any of us have ever experienced the loss, as you put it, or the pain and suffering, to whatever degree, whatever the details are, that's not important. I do want to give you a little teaser for next Sunday, because I want us all to realize what Brian has said, and that we are focused on this time, this life, this day, this week, where this pain and suffering and loss is taking place. And then time goes by, whatever time it takes. And here comes this axiom. Does time really heal all? Is that the reincarnation reality? That we're going to come back and redo in order to progress. And that will be a healing process. And again, I want to give you just a teaser for the things I'll be talking about next week. Because one thing is for certain, life and death is our reality. We face it every day. We sometimes cause it every day, whether we're talking about fumigating for spiders or whether we're talking about accidentals. We kill ideas, we kill love, we kill relationships without actually taking the physical body. Isn't that an interesting thing that happens in this time frame?
Mm-hmm.
Brian, thank you. Much food for thought, much deep-seated foundation. Much thanks.
Thank you.
Brian, my name is Kim. I wanted to ask a question. I've been looking at a lot of material on death. And one of the things they talked about was people have exit points. Some are like, there's a choice, but then there's others that are, that they made an agreement to. And so you have choices about exit points. And if that's true, could a suicide be an exit point that was already preordained in their soul agreements?
You know, Honestly, I don't have an answer for that. The supreme being, God, knows, because God knows everything. God is the cause of all causes. Potentially it does exist, that maybe God knows that a person's going to commit suicide or not. I'll tell you this, though. I wanted to kill myself. I put a noose around my head. I was ready to hang myself from the rafters. And I heard this voice that said, "You are not programmed for this lifetime. You are not programmed. You are not programmed for this lifetime." That's my answer.
That's interesting. Thank you. I'm just curious, as someone who thought about it, what do you think would make a person want to commit suicide so badly? Is there any one thing above others?
No way out.
No way,
Utterly hopeless.
no way out.
Have nowhere to turn. Can't shut it off. It's there 24/7.
Wow. Well, then how did you let go of it? How, when they said you're not programmed for this, was that your way out? Hearing that voice?
I seeked another who understood my story, who lived my story. Maybe not walked exactly like I did, but walked enough to where our stories correlated. I felt there was someone else out there who thought like me, someone who is like me, but not like me, but like me. There is a similarity. And then next thing you know, you could share the pain inside of you because you felt this person understood you, because this person is living what you're living through. And then in doing so, you're able to shed the weight. And as you shed the weight, what's so important is to start giving it away, meaning helping another, just like that individual is helping you. That's what saved me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I also wanted to add towards your question. I think it was a few weeks ago that we listened to a lecture based on a book on forgiveness. And there we learned that according to this Spiritist author, that the root cause of the desire to take our lives is rooted in guilt. Guilt that then, and it's turned towards us, that then turns into remorse and then self-pity and self-punishment. And that in turn, triggers psychosocial, spiritual imbalances like emotional disturbances, social conflicts, mental conflicts, and the list goes on. And then the solution out of this ball of pain, so to speak, not knowing where to go, may end up in suicide. Whereas on the other side, when we have hurt from somebody we perceive has hurt us, and we don't deal with it responsibly in the sense that we get stuck in the feelings of rancor, and then hatred and vengeance, and that often not often, I don't want to put that judgment on it, but can lead to homicide. So that is kind of like the roster we learned a few weeks ago. I don't know whether that helps you.
Not really. Just
What, Kim.
Go ahead, Carl. Go ahead, Mark.
I just want to say something, that whether it's this type of a forum or whether it's you doing your own research in whatever fashion you choose to take, you can look for a common thread and therefore prepare yourself or prepare others for that commonality. But I would just suggest to us all, I don't think God created us with commonality in mind. What makes me tick is different from what makes Brian tick, different from what makes you tick. What trips my trigger to get to the point of where I have no other choice to get to suicide is completely different than anybody else. And while there might be a common reason, as Brian just said, hopelessness, depression, whatever, statistically, you can go a variety of different ways. 1929, the stock market, 100 people committed suicide that day. 78 of them committed suicide because they were responsible for thousands of other people's lives, not just their own. 3 months later, 23,000 people have committed suicide because of the financial crash of 1929. Okay, wait a minute. Is there a common thread there? Materiality? Ego? I don't know. You have to live through that. More importantly, you have to die through that to start getting an understanding of what happened. We can't figure that out here on Earth anymore. We can figure out cancer strategies. Every person's different. And yeah, there are common threads statistically, but let's not jump to conclusions. We are in charge of us, nobody else. If we succumb to somebody else's idea of what makes sense, now's the time to die, I'm sorry, that's not why God put me here. And that's not certainly what I'm trying to teach my children and everybody in my life circle. But that's me.
I didn't mean to say not really. But when you mix the homicide in with it, I was like, so that's what, but up until then, I was kind of getting it. But I don't know, that's intense. This is an intense conversation that I don't think the average person could even hear. It's intense,
Yeah. Forgiveness. Forgiveness was big for me, forgiving how I lived a life that I wasn't happy with. That I could forgive myself for the choices. And forgive others who might have had a part in, of my life along that way. But then, I forgive them because it's me who, I have free will. I chose to take the path that I took, not them. They were part of that path, and I felt their vibrations at times on that path, and it might have took me off my center, so to speak. But I chose to go off that center because that's how I reacted to whatever that energy that was coming toward me. But also, I had to see where I was and what was my part in everything. No matter my part by myself, but my part in working with others or being a part of others. How did I affect them? And then where I saw that I had done some damage, then I had to go out and repair it. Even if the other one wasn't willing to receive what I wanted to share, at least I was putting out the vibration of reparation. Once again, everybody has their free will on how they react to a situation. I just wanted to add that to that situation, and I think Sunshine was touching on that, and anyway, I just thought it was important because it was.
Thank you
And
both.
I want to say that I agree with you that it is an intense conversation, and we are emotional and mental beings, and no one walks in our shoes.
Yeah.
So, and we do have free will. That's true. So I think when you actually see it or work on it, there is a lot of pain through the whole family, not just that person. So we don't know. So, and like I said, everybody's different, and no one walks in your shoes.
But we do hope that as spirituality catches on, that more and more people will start educating their family about love, loving themselves and respect, and not judging them for not being like a movie star or being like the neighbor next door. Just have more faith and courage in who they are as a being, because we're not the same. And we're not going to all get it the same, And I was telling a story the other day about how one of my nieces couldn't even ride down the street, ride the bike in the middle of the street without hitting the fence or a car. I mean, but grew up to be focused. You see what I'm saying? It is, so we never know. But the key to it is if someone is depressed, that's what this fraternal counseling is about. All we can do is listen. We're not God. We're not here to encourage what they're doing. And we can't do it all in one day at all. But we're here to listen if they want to listen. But they need professional help, if that's where they are. But if they just want me to listen to them, I got you. I'm here to listen. It's not my job to say, but God doesn't want anyone to take their life. We don't have that right. And finding out through suicide is the hard way to find out you should not have taken your life.
Yeah.
I
And
wanted to share a story real quick. I was talking to a gentleman on Friday who has cancer, and I listened to him almost an hour. He's a scientist. He's a professor, well-educated man. And I must have listened to him almost an hour about why he was an atheist and that there was no proof that God existed. So it was a very interesting conversation that I listened to, because I didn't really respond in a whole lot of ways. But to be honest, I felt so sorry for him. And he knows he's going to die. And that was the interesting part for me. So that he's not willing to do anything, any education, and who am I to say? That's his journey. So anyway, I just wanted to share that real quick.
thank you, sister. Thank you for all the comments. Kim, quickly to your question, if we come with that in our program, one of the things that I read is that we come with our inclinations, but we all have free will. So our program is for us to live and to overcome those inclinations. But if we do not overcome any of those things that we've been carrying, as one of the stories that Brian was mentioning, that the man killed himself for the fourth time, then our trials will take us to face that more and more. And that's why having all the conversations and the understanding might help us to find another way out. So we do not come programmed for that. God doesn't program us for that, but we bring those inclinations from other lifetimes. And then it's our free will. And then the last message that I wanted to give is to remind us about a message that Emmanuel gave to us, which is love is the silent hope of heaven, awaiting the evolution of all principles, while respecting the decision of all conscience. So heaven is here with us, God is here with us, and they are supporting each one of us in the journey, but it's our decision to do whatever we want to do.
Yep.
All right, so we are very past of time, but this conversation was really good. I didn't want to interrupt us. So let us take 2 minutes break, and then we come back for the healing passes, so then we can all clean the energy. I know that it's a heavy conversation. Let's make sure that we leave this room energetic with enlightening conversation. This is for us to feel good and for us to give to others the good energy that we received in here. 2 minutes then? All right.